Hello from me and Rollo here on the couch. I received a DM from a mum the other day asking for some advice, and that is what to do if your 2-year-old isn't talking. In this case, the mum was describing how her son is actually 2.5 and not talking, and really the question is where to begin. I do have a YouTube playlist with lots of videos of activity ideas and strategies to get started, and I also have a comprehensive online program with support from myself called Toddler Talk for parents in just this situation. But I also wanted today to dive into a few of those kind of guiding principles, a few starting points to support you in the process of figuring out your child's communication development and figuring out what is most helpful for them. So without further ado, let's get started. First suggestion, hear me out, is to spend time with them. I know that this sounds obvious, but what I find is that for our children who are communicating differently or not communicating very much, it can be easy to start to think, oh, they just prefer their own company. They'd just rather be by themselves. I'll leave them to it. And so encouraging you to spend time without it having to look like you're teaching them lots of words or getting them to talk, but to just sit down with them. In my initial speech therapy appointments with families, often we talk about how learning to share space is a key part of early social interaction and communication. And so when you're simply sitting and spending time in the same room as your child, sitting on the floor even with them and just watching and noticing their play, that's a hugely valuable part. You're giving them a valuable learning opportunity there without having to do lots of talking, which leads me to my second guiding principle. Allow for quiet. I often encourage families to embrace the awkward silence because we know it's awkward, right? To not be able to kind of fill up all the space and to hear the tumbleweed is uncomfortable. But your child is still busy learning a lot of the fundamentals of communication and sharing space together. And you don't have to fill up all of that silent space. There's power and there's value in allowing for the quiet. And this is something that we look at in a lot more detail in my online program for parents, Toddler Talk. How do we get comfortable with that quiet, and how do we notice all the things that are actually going on in that time where it feels like it's quiet, no one's talking, nothing's happening? Not so. There's lots happening in that busy silence. So allow for that quiet, get comfortable with it. And this leads me to my third suggestion. Practice presence. If your child isn't talking and it feels like they should be talking by now, then it's really easy to spend all of our time not in the moment, but actually worrying about what we might have done in the past, what's going to happen in the future, and we kind of start catastrophizing. I say this because I've been there too. We've all experienced this. And often the more worried we are, the harder it is to be truly present and attending to the details of what your marvelous, unique kiddo is doing. And when we can find a way to be really, truly aware and present in that moment, we can see how your child is exploring, learning about the world, and those moments when they start figuring out how to invite you into their play. And this relates to my fourth suggestion, which is to look for how your child is communicating. Communication is not just about the talking, although I appreciate it's easy to focus in on that if that's the thing that you don't hear your child doing. But actually, the more that we notice the variety of ways that your child is communicating, whether that's bringing you to things, bringing objects to you for your help, whether they're making sounds or using their bodies or their facial expressions, all of these are parts of how we connect with each other, how we share our delight in the moment or our frustration. All of this is communicative and valuable. When you notice your child doing something that feels communicative, respond warmly to it. You don't need to hold off and wait for them to use their talking or use their proper words. You're not making them lazy by making it easier for them. We know that many children need extra help to learn how to communicate. And it doesn't help us when we say, oh, no, you need to work harder at this. They're already working so hard with the little bits of progress that they're making. So when we notice those tiny attempts that they are making to communicate something to us, we want to respond to that rather than saying, use your words. We want to just respond to what they're doing in the moment. Of course, there's lots more detail to this, right? You know, I work with families over many weeks in developing and kind of honing their awareness, their attunement, their ability to respond to their child's communication, to facilitate more and more of that. Finally, I would suggest that you really focus on celebrating those tiny wins. If your child needs extra time and support to develop their communication, then it can feel like a long road. You want to find the people who get it, who understand what a big deal it is when your child does something seemingly small, who can celebrate with you. This is so important for all of us to keep us going, to keep us spending that time supporting a child's communication even when it feels like slow progress. So if you want to start today, I encourage you to drop in the comments, what's a tiny win that you've had in your week or in your day? Something tiny that you've noticed your child doing. Because when you acknowledge that every one of these tiny steps that you're taking together is a step in the right direction, then you've got that motivation, you've got that energy to keep going, keep exploring and finding out together with your child, how are they communicating? What helps them to get their message across? And how can the two of you enjoy your time together? Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate your question, your DMs, and your comments below. Let me know how you're getting on. Tell me about your tiny wins, and until next time, I'll see you around.